All right, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on team registration. I'm just going to allow another minute or so for anybody who is still getting signed into the webinar here, and then we'll do some introductions and get started. Okay, I do see some more people filing in, but we'll go ahead and get started with just some introductions and a couple housekeeping things before we get into really what the meat of the webinar is going to be all about. So the first thing is today we're talking about the Goal Line platform, and we're going to talk about team registration specifically. So team registration into a tournament or a league type event. A couple of housekeeping things just to start. You'll notice that there is a chat module in the webinar program here, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. Roberto from the Goal Line support team is in the chat there to help field some of those questions, and we'll either answer your questions in line or as we go through the rest of the webinar, those questions may be answered. If you do still have questions at the end, feel free to reach out to the Goal Line support team at any time, and you can do that by emailing goallinesupport@stacksports.com. The next thing that I'll just mention really quickly is that I do notice that not everyone who signed up for today's webinar actually uses Goal Line, and of those using Goal Line, not everyone may be using team registration. So if you do have questions about how do I enable that, how do I get access to a system like that, then you can definitely reach out to the support team as well, or you can reach out to our customer success team at customersuccess@stacksports.com. So getting into today's webinar, we are going to talk about team registration. So we'll start by talking just a little bit about why would I use team registration, what are the requirements that the system requires in order to get set up, and we'll go through the process of how do you build and manage a team registration form. Then we'll follow up with how do I review the registrations, how do I invite people, accept and reject teams, and so on, and then how do we manage rosters for those teams after the registration has occurred. I do see the first question there, and I should have mentioned that in the housekeeping. So yes, this session is being recorded. For those who maybe signed up but couldn't attend or who want to just refer to it later, the session is being recorded, and you should receive an email shortly after the webinar that provides you a link to the recording. That recording can be shared with others from your organization if you wanted to share that out. You can also reach out to the support team to ask for basically the link to this webinar. And keep an eye out for new webinars that we'll be putting on more regularly. So sorry about missing that part. Yes, it is recorded. So if you missed something, you can always go back. So why would we use team registration? So if you are a league or if you're running a tournament, you're going to want to use team registration to control the teams that are registering with you, not just how many teams, but what information about those teams is going to be collected. You also have potentially fees that need to be collected for teams, especially into a tournament. You want to be able to control the number of teams and manage wait lists and things like that. So team registration allows you to decide of all the registrants that are coming in and signing up for my tournament or for my league, what information is it that I want? I want every team to have a minimum of one coach, a minimum of 10 players, for certain sports, maybe a minimum of one goalie, of those players that's being collected, different registration fees and wait list options and things like that. So team registration would be specifically for an organization who manages a league with multiple divisions or a tournament that offers multiple divisions, so that those teams can go register, pay online, be managed entirely online. The things that we need to have set up in the system, there are some things that you do have to do prior to being able to use team registration. We're not going to cover all of that in today's webinar, but there are some scheduling tools that do need to be set up. Anybody who's gone through the setup of a Goal Line system knows that we need to have set up either leagues or association teams, and then those teams and leagues need to have an active season and schedule. So those requirements do still apply. And in order to say that a division is available for a team registration on your form, it does have to be active with a current season and schedule. So it is important to have those things set up. So leagues that we would use would be things like, different divisions. So some examples on the demo site that we're using here today, like boys tyke, boys novice, boys Adam and Pee Wee, and so on. U15 tier 1, U15 tier 2, U15 boys, that kind of thing. So each and every one of the divisions that are offered, basically categories or divisions of play, are what you're going to be setting up as leagues. So Goal Line's going to refer to that as just managing your leagues, but you might refer to them more as divisions. You can change up these labels that you see on the actual public site there as needed. So the system requirements are going to be that you have set up, at least to a point, your leagues and have an active season and an active schedule. You'll also need to have set up a payment gateway. We offer a StackPay merchant processor to collect your online credit card payments so that teams can pay online as part of the registration process and you're not having to chase money down later on. So those are kind of the big things that I wanted to mention right at the beginning here and just get that set up so that we know what is required in the system, and we'll take a look at how those things start to relate. The way we manage our registration forms is obviously going to be on the back end of the site, not so much on the public side here. So you'll select the admin login and you'll go ahead and log in using your username and password that you have to access your system. I just have that open in a new tab, so I'm just going to switch some tabs here. And so now I'm logged into my system here and I've got my control panel available to me. If I did need to do that managing leagues, seasons, and schedules, I'm going to go to the schedule section of my master menu and I'm going to do that by using manage leagues and then managing my season and schedule. But assuming that we've done that and we have all of our leagues set up here, like we can see here, we're going to go ahead and get started with looking at building a team registration form. So team registration forms are found in the people section. This is also where you'll find individual registrations if you wanted just players or coaches to go and register by themselves. Team registration forms are going to be found right here. The options that I see here, you may or may not see exactly the same options, but if you do have access to registration tools, you will see team registration forms available here, and that's going to take you to the team registration page where you can start building a registration form. So there are no forms right now available. We haven't created anything. So we're going to go ahead and just create our very first registration form. So we'll have a 2020 summer tournament registration. And I'll click to create my team registration form. When I go to create that form, I'm going to be able to edit this in a 5-step process. So the very first step of this is going to be to set up sort of my form title, my menu link that I want when I have it published to my site. I want to have my expiration date set up so that it will automatically expire when I no longer want to take registrations, and then set up some things about the pricing structure and some general information about the form. The expiration date, so we'll talk about this part here. We'll kind of go down through step 1 and then we'll go through steps, the rest of the steps there. So the expiration date, if I want this form to close and not be available on, say, July 1st, then I'm going to set my closing date to be June 30th. I want my closing date, it's going to expire at the end of the day that I set here. So if I want this to be not available anymore on the 1st, then I'm going to set this to be my expiration date there. So just keep that in mind when it comes to when you want people to no longer be allowed to use this registration form. The pricing structure here, we will talk more about how this relates when we start looking at step 3, which is where we're going to add our programs. But there are 2 options in here. One option says prices are open to all leagues, and then one is price based on league choice. If you are an organization that offers multiple divisions on your registration form, which often you will do, I always recommend using price based on league choice. The reason for this is that it makes it so that when I say, if I'm registering my team, if I say that my team is a boys tyke team, it's going to lock my program choice to the program choice that's appropriate for that specific one, so that I can't say we're going to sign up for boys tyke, but then I'm going to select the registration registration option for girls Pee-wee or Bantam or something like that. So it helps to make sure that people don't incorrectly select the wrong options later on. It just kind of locks in that choice for them, and I find that it's a really good way to go. It's particularly important if the prices for each of those divisions is different, but when it comes to the reporting that we're going to see later on, it's important in that sense as well, because you'll have less administrative work to do to kind of move teams around if they've made the wrong selections. We do have a couple of references in here that I won't talk too much about, but we do, the Goal Line platform does have a membership functionality, which means anybody who registers can register, but they have to be checked for whether or not they've purchased the appropriate membership already. And if they haven't, then they'll be able to purchase that membership as part of the registration. So this particular demo site doesn't have that set up, but just be aware that that is an option, so that if it's applicable to your organization, then that might be something that you reach out and get some more information about. If you do want to start accumulating a wait list when your maximum number of registrants has been met, you want to select yes here. Otherwise, it's just going to not let people register. And once that maximum is reached, it's just going to say that this program is full and you're not going to be able to select it. So if you do want to have that option of compiling a wait list, you can do that here as well. Spares list refers generally to pickup sports, so it doesn't typically apply to a league or a tournament, but a spares list would be if somebody wanted to register themselves as a spare so that they could be picked up and called on as sort of a call up in generally more casual type of play. If you are going to do a wait list, you may or may not want to show the wait list size. So do you want people on the public side when they're going through, do you want them to know how many people are ahead of them in the wait list? And that really is going to depend on how transparent you want to be and sort of how you select who you invite to register from that wait list. So if you pick people based on first come, first serve, then showing the wait list size is probably not a big deal. But if you do have some method of prioritizing those wait lists, then you may not want to show the wait list size, so that people, if I was number 12 on the wait list, but then the person after me was invited, if I didn't know that I was number 12, then I don't know anything about that. So you can show or hide that wait list size. The registered here before and manage my account link, these refer to whether or not certain options show up, whether can I sign into my registration account directly from that registration form if you don't have that option directly in your menu. And registered here before would allow me to say, I already have a team that's registered to an event in this exact site on the, with this organization, and I want to register that exact team for some other event that is going on. So this typically applies when an organization is just running multiple events that all require team registration. And the idea there is that using their access code, they'll bring up any team that they're a coach for, and they can select from those teams and then not have to re-enter that information on the team registration form manually. It will just pre-populate with all the coaches and players that are already part of that previously registered team. There are event information and priority registration options available here. So event information is particularly important if you are a Goal Line system that is registration only or has the event search look, which means you have some categories placed on the public side of your site for all of your registration forms to go into. If that's the case, then you at the very least need to select an event viewer category so that we know where to place that registration form. So this particular site doesn't have those categories set up, but if you do, if there's anything in this drop-down list, it is important to make sure that you have that set up because the event viewer category is going to allow it to be navigated to from those search options on the public side there. You can also do things like, is it a featured event, and have other event-specific information that just displays as added information when people go to view that form. In addition to seeing the form, they'll see a little block of information that says when is the event, what's that primary location, who do I contact in the case of having questions and things like that. So event-specific contact information as opposed to just contact information for your whole site is good to have on those individual forms. So you can do this, but you don't have to include that. If you do have an event search style site, then I do encourage you to use that for sure. Priority registration options are, they're not used super frequently, but one of the main purposes of this is to say, if you registered with us in the past, I want to give you priority, and I want to say you can to say that you can register before anybody else can register. So if I want this form to open to the public on, say July 30th, but I want people who've registered with me previously to be able to register before that so that they take up most of those spaces, then I can set my effective dates here to say you can register starting on June 24th if you've already registered with us in the past, or if you have this code that I can make up and share with people. So whether you've registered with us or have this code, you'll be allowed to register on the 24th, when the general public maybe can't register until say July 1st. So you can do all kinds of different things when it comes to that priority registration. Just a quick note on priority registration, you don't actually have to have a general open date at all. The entire form could be behind priority registration only, and only people with a certain code would be able to access that form, or if they've registered in your events in the past. So priority registration is a good tool to use. A lot of leagues will use that from year to year to say people who were part of our league last year can register now, but anybody who hasn't registered or been part of our league before has to wait, say, another 2 weeks, and then it becomes a general open registration. The league and season information is particularly important because this is how we know whether or not people, or what categories or divisions people can actually register for. So the league drop down on the form, you can create your own label for this. So if you don't want to call it a league, if you want to call it a division, you can do just that. So select a division, select your division, pick a division, whatever it is that you want. This is just a text area for you to fill in for that label. The pre-selected item for the dropdown should only be used if you only have one division to select. If there's only one division available for the particular event that you're doing, then you can use the pre-selected item and you'll select whichever one is the one that's available for this form. As soon as you have multiple options that you're offering, so if we're offering it to all of our, say, boys divisions, if it's a boys tournament, then I want to make sure that I'm selecting them from here, and I'm not pre-selecting anything. I don't want to assume anything about the folks that are coming to register on this form. So I would select the ones that I want to allow registration for here. This should default to say only allow registrations to the following leagues, but you can kind of do it the opposite way if you wanted to. If you have more divisions that are not offered, or that kind of thing, so you can kind of do that backwards. If you wanted to say it's everything except for boys tyke, so I would say do not allow registrations to boys tyke. If I want it to be for everything that I'm highlighting, then I'm going to select it this way. So I'm going to scroll down. We'll maybe pick all the boys options here. I'm going to use the shift key. You can use the shift or the control key to select more than one option in one of these multi-select boxes here. So if you did want to select maybe girls tyke as well, I can hold down the control key and select that, or use the same control key to deselect that. I'm not a Mac person, but I believe the command key does the same thing in that particular instance. So that's how we make sure that we know which divisions are going to be available. So as soon as I've got those selected, so these are the ones that are going to show up in that drop down when I say select a division, it's going to give them these specific choices, and we won't see girls bantam, girls pee-wee, girls tyke, and so on in that list. The team information that you're going to be collecting is obviously going to be, they have to select a division. They can't register without selecting a division. They also have to provide you with the team name. Other than that, you can set some of the information to be collected as required, and in some cases it can't be required. For example, their website, you can't require them to provide you a website, but you could allow them to provide it to you. If you need their association, like what club or association do they belong to, you can also ask for that. But the team name is obviously the most important option here. And if you also want to collect what color their jerseys are, that's a pretty important one for tournaments. Tournaments will want to collect jersey information as far as what the colors are for scheduling purposes, just to know whether or not they have multiple colors and things like that. So those are some options that you can select here. You'll notice that by default, the team name is going to be selected there. Without collecting the team name, you'll be in a lot of trouble. The next option we see here is the roster lock date. And this again is optional, but it's strongly recommended, especially for a tournament, so that you can have a date where people can manage their rosters up to the date that's in the roster lock. When you do have a roster lock, it will by default send out a couple of automatic email reminders. They'll receive an email reminder 72 hours and 24 hours before that roster lock is going to take place, just to remind them that if they have any changes that they need to make to their roster, that they have, just that much time to get those completed. This isn't the only place where you can control roster locks, but this is the only place where you can do it on a per event basis. So this roster lock would only apply to teams that were registered against this team registration form. We do have other roster lock options within the Goal Line platform that allow you to lock all rosters. And if you're a parent organization, you can even lock the rosters for your child sites. So this one here is just specifically talking about for this event, you have to have your roster edited and completed by whatever date is important to you there. Once that roster lock has been met, the coach or website admin with team specific permission is not going to be able to manage their roster anymore, but another admin would be able to. Anybody with league specific permissions or the specific permission to manage locked rosters would be able to make any of those changes. So once that roster lock date has passed, they would have to reach out to some administrator within the organization to make any changes. You can disable the roster lock emails that are sent out by selecting yes for the disable roster lock email option here. So this doesn't change the fact that there's a roster lock. It just doesn't remind them automatically. So my recommendation would be that if you're not going to have the system send automatic reminders, that you make sure to communicate that well to the registrants. The last thing on step one for our form and setup information is going to be about our payment options. So how do we want people to pay, or how are we forcing people to pay, depending on how you look at it? So your options here are to permit offline, which are cash or check payments, to process online payments, or both. So you can say that, yes, you can pay online or offline. So when I get to the end of the registration, I'm going to have a choice. Do I want to be offline or online? If I say offline, then I can fully register, but I haven't paid yet. And then you'll record my payment manually later. If you process online payments, then I'm going to make my payment as I register. Associated with those options are the option to automatically accept teams that pay online. And we will talk about accepting and rejecting teams later on after we've gone through the form builder process here. But what automatically accepting teams would mean is that if they are paid in full by the time the registration is done, so either the registration didn't actually have a cost, or they paid online by credit card, the team will automatically be accepted if you have this set to yes, which means you don't have to manually review and manually accept the teams that have paid online or are considered paid in full. Just a quick note, because I said that already, is that if you do not have any fees, so if this is free, people are registering and it doesn't actually cost them anything, you do still have to offer offline as a payment option, so that they'll have that option when they submit, but you just simply wouldn't have it set to collect their online payment. When you do want to collect online payment, you do have to have a payment gateway. So we've got a test account on here, which happens to be a PayPal account, but you would have set up a StackPay merchant account to collect your online credit card payments. If you don't have a payment gateway to select when you're looking at this particular part of the form, then you can reach out to the support team or the success team to get you set up with a pricing agreement to get set up with a StackPay merchant account. That will allow you to collect your online payments and have integrated refunds and things like that. So that is our step one here. And I do see a couple of questions. So I'll just look in the chat for a quick second here. So how do we change the division name? So that's a great question. They are populated from your list of leagues that were added through Manage Leagues. And that's not part of today's webinar, but that is where these are going to come from. So in your scheduling section, you'll have Manage Leagues, and in there is going to be where all your divisions are listed. For anybody here, I'm not sure if this is is happening all over the world, but I know it's happening here in Canada, where we're no longer going to be using the labels such as Pee-wee, Bantam, junior, midget, and that type of thing. Those are going to be switching to age-specific categories, so U15 and things like that. So if you do have that change to make, then that's something that you can do through the scheduling tab and going to manage leagues. And it's just a matter of clicking edit, change the name, and away you go. So you don't have to delete and re-add or anything like that. If the league just needs to be changed from boys tyke to boys U6, then you can make that change just using manage leagues. And as soon as you have your leagues listed there, they're going to be showing up in this list of divisions available to select. If there's any divisions that aren't showing here, it could be because they don't have an active season or schedule, or part of the league is not active all the way and needs to be activated. So that might be something that you find you'll come back in and do after. So that covers step one. And you would save your changes here. Well, why don't I do that? I should save my changes here. I'm going to not collect my online because that is a test form. So the next step is going to be looking at step two, which is the person information. So the person information, who are we collecting information about? And there's going to be three types of people that we can collect information about on a team registration form. It's kind of two, but a little bit three. So we've got coaching staff, and then of course players, but then we have what we consider the main contact, the team contact for this specific registration. The title of your coaching staff you can update. So different sports are going to refer to that differently. Some sports will call them bench staff, team officials, coaches, team staff, whatever makes sense for you. So we'll just use team staff here. And then that can include a coach, up to 3 assistant coaches, a manager, and a trainer. Your main contact can be either someone in that list or a new person altogether. So it really kind of depends on what you expect from your registrants. We do have an option that lets you say, I want this, I want the main contact. I want them to choose who their main contact is. So you can either say that the main contact will be a new person independent of the coaches, or you can say, I want them to tell me who the main contact is. So if I ask for a head coach, an assistant coach, and a manager, you could say that it has to be the manager. Or you can say that it's going to be their choice and they're going to say, I want the main contact to be my head coach. And this really just matters because we want to make sure that we're collecting enough information from that one main contact that you're going to be dealing with, whereas you probably won't be doing a lot of direct communication with the assistant coaching staff and that kind of thing when it comes to team registrations. So you want to give your coaching staff section a title, whatever makes sense to you as a title. Then the registrant's choice versus being a brand new person or a specific person is up to you. Registrant's choice is the most flexible option because it lets them say, okay, I'm registering 3 coaches and I'm going to pick this one as the main contact with a phone number and other address information. The option to add a main contact as a team administrator is available here. And this, whether or not you choose this, is really going to depend on what is it that you expect that contact to do after they've registered their team. So if you are a league where it's going to be generally expected that a team contact, is responsible for printing game sheets and reporting game scores for their home team games or games that they won or whatever your rules happen to be, then you may want to select a yes for adding this main contact as a team administrator. What this will do is automatically, when the team is accepted, the main contact will receive a username and a password so that they can access the back end of your goal line system. They will be given team-specific access to only the team that they've registered to be able to manage their players, to manage other coaching staff, and to manage their schedules and report games and print game sheets. If you don't need them to do that, then you don't necessarily need to add them as a website administrator. There are other ways you can manually create website admins anytime you want with a full gamut of permissions. That's not going to be covered in today's webinar, but just so you're aware that you can do that separately. This would be an option where every team that registers is going to have a team contact added as a website admin. So if that's not appropriate, then you don't have to do that. We'll talk as well later about how rosters can be managed after the fact. So if there is an issue with you want them to be able to manage rosters but nothing else, then we can say no to this option here, and we'll talk about roster edit later. The coaching staff personal information, what about the coaches do I want to collect? So by default, the goal line system is going to require first name, last name, and date of birth. Some organizations also have email address required. I usually say I recommend you always consider email address to be required, just because it's such a primary method of communication. But first name, last name, and date of birth is required. And you'll notice that you just can't remove the birth date option from here on the team registration. The reason for that is that those three criteria are how we differentiate duplicates. And in a lot of network situations, we may have master records to reconcile to. So you want to make sure that you're always collecting that information. So you can collect gender, middle name, phone numbers, and things like that. You can label what those phone numbers are as well. So the phone title for phone, phone 1, phone 2, you could say, I want your cell phone to be to be phone 1, and I want your home phone to be phone 2, or whatever it is that makes sense to you if you're collecting that information. Everything that you're collecting here is optional. If you do select that you want to collect full information from the main contact as either yes or required, it will require them to put in their full address, including address and postal code or zip code. And it would say zip code if you are located in the United States. It's dynamic based on your location here. Same thing with the currency is automatically updated based on where you're located. But you can also ask citizenship questions and association questions if that's appropriate for you. So these are things that will be asked of every person who is on the coaching staff list. You can also ask additional questions. So this is our first view of where we see additional questions. So extra questions to ask each member of the coaching staff. So that's kind of an important differentiator, because we see something very similar. This is extra questions to ask after the coaching staff section. So this is going to be asked once for the whole form, whereas this is going to be asked once for each person that's being added to the coaching staff section. Adding questions, extra questions, can be done in a variety of ways. So your questions can be different styles. So we've got text box, radio button, drop down, and text areas that we can use here. There are, in some parts of registration, you'll see checkbox options as well for multiple select, but team registration only allows us for single select options or text to be entered. So you can enter your question. You can determine what order it goes in if you have multiple questions. You can set your question to be required as well if you really need that question to be required. If it's optional, you can say no to it being required. They will be able to register without answering you. So if it is required, you want to make sure that you say yes there. When it comes to radio button and drop down options, we'll see that this will change a little bit, and it's going to ask me for what my options are. So whatever your question is, have you participated in our tournament before? With options of yes or no. So you can add different options in there so that they can make their selections as a required question or not. The other thing we see here is office only. So office only questions are not asked to the registrant on the form itself. It's something that an admin could go through when we're reviewing registered teams. We could answer that question and save that change on our review registered team profile page, but it's not going to be on the form itself. Note that you can't make an office only question required. So we don't get into that loop of not being able to answer a question that's required. The questions to ask after the coaching staff section, here we see our checkbox option in here. We can ask extra questions to the whole team. So, what events has your team participated in before? You could list a bunch, check all that apply. How'd you hear about us? There's all kinds of different types of questions you may want to ask. Again, we can set those as required or office use only. One really important item is that you can set this to be part of your recap, which is when we go to review our registered teams and report on registrations later, the default list that I see when I do my search result, do I want it to include the answer to this question or not? That's what this recap will do. So if I want to review registered teams later, see a list and know exactly the answer to this question at a glance in my team list that I see, then I want to make sure that I say, yes, I want this in the recap. But it's something that I don't really need to see immediately. It's something that maybe I want to be able to check on it, but I don't need to see it in my search results. Then you don't need to say yes to it being in the recap. This is retroactive as well. So if I forgot to say that, yes, I want it in my recap, I go to do my search, I don't see the answer, you can come in here, edit this question, and then go do your search again, and it will show up as part of that recap at that point. So that is how we can ask those extra questions. And now we get into the player information. So player information, it really varies how people decide that they want to collect this information. We have it set so that you can say, I need a minimum number of players to register. I have a maximum number that I will allow to register, but you actually don't really need to include players at all. So if I have 0 minimum and 0 maximum, it means we're not even going to collect player information. We're not going to ask for player information on this form at all. We're just going to have the coaches and team contact and answer these questions, pay your fee, and now your team is in and we'll deal with the roster later. Or maybe you're an organization that doesn't particularly care about the roster at all. You just need the team name in there for scheduling purposes. So whatever your needs are, you can set that here. A lot of times, especially for a tournament, we'll see a minimum number of players of, something like you have to have a minimum of 10 players. You can have no more than 20 players. And, I mentioned earlier is, sometimes goalies, you might need to have a minimum number of goalies. In order for you to say that I want a minimum number of goalies, one important thing is that you will have to collect the position of each player, which is going to be one of these radio button options down here. So you have to say position is required in order for me to enforce the requirement that there has to be at least one goalie registered with this team. So this is just often to avoid teams having to drop out at the last second because their goalie couldn't make it or they didn't have a goalie to start with and that kind of thing. So you can set these up however you'd like, whatever makes sense to you. I'm just going to set this a little bit differently so that we can view that a little better. Affiliate players may or may not apply to you either. So affiliate players are the call-up players that aren't normally part of that team. You can say that you want to allow affiliate players, yes or no, are required. It's really only one of those things that matters if you're also managing the rest of the teams outside of just this event. Otherwise, the system doesn't really recognize that they're affiliate players anyway. But you can set that there is a maximum number of affiliate players. So if this is kind of playoff registration information, perhaps you have a maximum number of affiliates that are allowed, or maybe you don't allow affiliates at all because it's a provincial or a regional qualifying event or something to that effect. And then if there is any information you need to provide about those affiliate players, then you can include that here just so that people see that information on the form. For the player information, as I mentioned earlier, first name, last name, date of birth is required for every player that's going to be entered on the form. Strongly encouraged to also collect the position and jersey number, particularly if you want that position information to be available. You can also require gender and other address information. My typical recommendation is to require as little as possible about players. So the minimum you need is what you should be collecting, because team contacts, you don't want to force team contacts to, have to type in all kinds of crazy information. Things like phone numbers and postal codes for their players. They may not have that information, and you want to make sure that what you do get from them is accurate, and not having to be too cumbersome collecting a lot of information, because this information would be required for every single player that they do add to the team. One of the things that we're going to see when it comes to the program restrictions is going to be gender and age restrictions. So you can't register a team that has people of the wrong gender or people of the wrong age. If you are going to use those, you do have to set the gender as required, because we can't confirm that they are the right gender if you don't collect that on the form. So if it's a male event or a female event, then you need to make sure that you're collecting that for those players. We can collect all kinds of other information, but as I said, the less is better so that you're not having to put in too much information. You can also ask extra questions of each player on the team and additional questions for the whole team at the bottom of the form. So lots of ways to get all of the information that you need about people right away. You can include attachments that the main contact who's registering this team could download, and you can also require them to upload a document as they're registering. So if you require them to prove that they are a sanctioned team and there's some kind of report that you want them to upload, that's something you could do. If you wanted them to download a medical waiver or something like that that they're going to be expected to bring to the event, you could have them download that from here so that they can print it out for their team and that kind of thing. So there's different options here for that. So this is how we collect our person information. So we can collect our coach information, one of which, or maybe somebody different, is going to be the main contact, and then we can collect our player information. All right, so the next thing we do, and I'll just go save this because I didn't save that. So we'll go and we'll move on to step 3. So step 3 is where we're going to add our program information. And there's something that I'll just recall to you from step 1 is that we made a selection on step 1 to say our price is based on the league choice that they've made. So whatever division they picked is the division that they're going to be, or the program that they're going to be locked into. And so because of that, I want to make sure that I have an option, a program for each one of those divisions. So boys tyke is one of those divisions. So I'll add that. So I just put in my program. What do I want it to be called? I click to add my payment type, and then it's going to pop up here with some additional options. What's the maximum number of teams? So this is particularly important when your event does have a maximum amount of space. So if I can only take 8 teams into the boys tyke division, then I want to make sure that my number of teams is set to 8. It will not accept more than 8 teams. You do have a way of qualifying that number though. So it depends a little bit on your choices when it comes to accepting teams. If you force everyone to pay online and use automatic acceptance, then using accepted teams would be totally fine. So the first 8 teams that registered and paid are the first 8 teams that are going to be allowed to, or that are going to be accepted. You can say that your maximum teams is all of the teams that have registered. So even if they haven't been accepted, that they would still be counted towards the maximum number. Otherwise, what ends up happening, if I say all teams and I have a mixture of teams who've paid online and offline, then I'm going to end up with a lot of teams that registered but won't be able to be accepted because they won't have paid, and then my program's going to fill up. So you want to think about whether or not the options here, if I want 8 to be my maximum and it's going to be the accepted teams, it's going to continue allowing people to register onto my wait list beyond the 8. But say I have 4 accepted teams, it's still going to allow up to 18 or 4 more teams to be accepted before it considers it to be closed. So I may have 16 registrations, but only 4 of them are accepted. And so it hasn't reached my maximum of 8 at that point. This selection here for the league is what relates directly to the price based on league choice. And that's where I'm going to want to say, this is my boys tyke program. So I want to map that to my boys tyke division. I can also set my age restrictions in here. When you do set age restrictions, you can allow people outside of that range, either on registration directly or on roster edit that we'll look at shortly. They'll just be highlighted in the list. It will show you a little bit of a visual cue that there are players that are outside the birth year range on the roster that was submitted for that particular team. We also have to include payment details. So boys tyke tournament, maybe you want to add some information. This is going to be July 30th, or whatever it is that you want to include in there to be that payment detail line, and put in whatever fee it is that they have to pay to join that event. If you do charge taxes, you can enter your tax amounts here. So there's up to 2 tax fields available for you to put here. So $100 plus here in Nova Scotia, actually it'd be 15% tax, or maybe you only have to charge a 5% tax, or maybe you don't charge tax at all and you don't have to worry about that. The general ledger code is sort of GL code. A lot of people think that means gold line code, but this is just a general ledger code for accounting purposes. This allows you to put in any kind of alphanumeric code here. So if I want this to be my boys' Tyke July tournament, I can, put in whatever accounting code is going to make sense to me later. This will export with the transaction details report, so that if you're taking that information over to an accounting program, you'll have that accounting code in there to say this $100 payment is associated with this general ledger code. If it's active, that means it's going to be available on the form for people to select. If it's not active, then it's not going to be available. So if you did want to just remove an option from the form, you could edit it to say not active. So I'm going to save the changes here, and I put in tax information and I should have probably just not. There we go. All right. So now we know that taxes can't be zero. So I would continue doing that and adding all of the different options. So boys Pee-wee, I think was an option there. So I would keep going through here and making sure that I have those options available to select. Boys Pee-wee, there we go. And need to put in here, so we can save that change there as well. I did see a quick question there, just out of the corner of my eye, about negative amounts. We can't use negative amounts here at all, but it is possible to add discounts and other products and things like that. But no, we can't do negative amounts. You are able to add coupons and discounts and products to your registration forms as well. Those products have to be added through our association-wide products feature. So if you don't have the ability, and I don't have it on this demo site right now, apologies there. You can reach out to our support team to get access to association-wide products. So in order to have products on a team registration form, that has to be enabled there. So, but you can also add discounts. So if you wanted to add an early bird discount or a loyalty discount to a team that's registered with you before, you can do that in there to put in a discount so that the $100 gets reduced to $75 or whatever it is. These can be dollar or percent. So that's our step 3, which is very, very important. I am only going to add these 2, and we are going to see how that affects things when we go to preview the form and take a quick look at it. But just wanted to add a couple of programs in there and not spend too much time on that. The next thing we'll do is look at step 4, which is our policy information. It is required on any Gold Line registration form to include a waiver, privacy policy, refund policy, contact information, and some method of consent. The CASL message here, this is the Canadian anti-spam legislation message. It is optional. It's not required to include a CASL message here. It is encouraged though, because people do have the option to not opt in to receiving emails from you. Transactional emails such as email confirmations and acceptance and things like that will go to them anyway, but things like general information email announcements that you send out may not if they don't subscribe. So adding information in there is always helpful. So you can have waiver information. This could just be a link to a waiver or a web page where you have your waivers and policies listed online, but some content does have to go in here. Within your individual sections, you can add individual consent macros, which would create a checkbox that the registrant has to select in addition to the overall consent that you can set below. So if you have multiple paragraphs and you want a check for each paragraph that you've written into your policies, then you can do that just by using the hashtag consent macro over here. When you're setting up your consent options, you'll notice that it can be a checkbox, or a name input. So the checkbox, you'll want to say, check here to agree to the above, terms and conditions and that kind of thing. Name input would be similar, but you would just indicate, type your name here to indicate that you've read these messages. The opt-in message, again, this refers to the CISL messaging that you may want to include, because that is a checkbox that will be deselected by default. So please be sure to, there you go, I've typed in here before. So please be sure to opt in to receiving our email and that kind of thing, and then save your policy information. I'm just going to change this over to a checkbox. Check this box. So we'll save our, well, I don't have any policies and consent here, and it's going to probably pop up and tell me that I didn't add anything. Oh no, it just won't let me publish it when I go to do that. But so those are required. Like I said, they can be links. So just make sure that you have your information in there. And then we get to step 5, which is the last step of building out this form. And that includes our confirmation email, our acceptance email, and a personnel email. So the confirmation email is going to go to them. I've registered. I'm not accepted. I'm not rejected. I've registered my team. I'm going to receive the confirmation email. It is required to include the from and the from email address and a subject, obviously, and the body will default to be thank you for your registration, and then it's going to provide these macros to fill in the information for your team name and then what you owe. So this is just the default, but you can see that there's all kinds of text placeholders here that you can select from so that you can send this email. You can make it personal, like dear main contact first name, thank you for your registration, please expect an information packet to come out and blah, 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 whatever makes sense to you that you want to include there. You can change up all of this stuff if you need to. And then there are this BCC option. So if you want to receive an email copy of everybody who's registered, so receive exactly the same confirmation email they received, you can add your email address in here. The acceptance email is almost exactly the same thing. The difference is that this goes out to them when their team has been accepted into the event. If you're using automatically accepting teams, then they're going to be automatically accepted as soon as they've registered. So they won't receive the confirmation email. They go straight to the acceptance email. Otherwise, they receive the acceptance email after you've manually accepted them. The personnel email goes to the individual people who have been registered as part of this team. As long as you're collecting their email address, their first name, last name, date of birth, and email, it's going to create them as a person in your system. They are going to become a player in your system, and it's going to send them this email that lets them know that they have been registered, that they've been registered for this event. They're on this team. They were registered by this person, this team into this division. And then there's some other information that will be put there, and then their personal access code so that they can access their newly created registration account that the Goal Line system has for them. You can append information to this if you want. So appended information might be, you don't really need to use this information. Please disregard or let us know if you have any questions. So, the reason that this goes out is that sometimes with our membership organizations in particular, people are purchasing a membership on behalf of someone else, and so this personnel email just kind of lets them know that happened, that this person did it, they were registered as part of this team, and so on. So this is a and you do have an option to not send that out, so you don't have to do that. This is our confirmation messaging section, so we would save our confirmation message, and then you can preview and publish your form. Now, I have a few settings that I didn't complete, so I don't have my waivers and I don't have all of my confirmation email set up, but I do have enough set up that I can go ahead and preview the form now. I don't think I opened it. Oh, I put it behind priority registration, and that is why. So I'm going to go back to step 1. So that's funny. I forgot that I did that. So we'll go here and we'll say, okay, this is not going to be priority registration anymore. And we'll go ahead and save that now. Apologies there. So now I'm going to click to preview my form. So previewing my form here, this is what it's going to look like to the registrants when they go and register. So we have select a division. Remember, I changed the label from select a league to division. And now we had selected about 6 different divisions, but only 2 of them are showing up here. There is a very specific reason why, and that's because I only added 2 programs. I selected the option that says, I'm just going to hop back over here for a sec. My pricing structure is based on league choice, and I only have 2 programs that have a league mapped to them, which is why I only have 2 options here. So that's just to let you know why that is. If you ever publish a form and you say, well, I had 6 leagues, but I'm only seeing 5 of them here, that means that your pricing structure just isn't quite finished, and you need to either add a new program or just go in and edit that program to manage what league it's associated with. So as soon as I selected Boys Pee Wee, we'll scroll down and see how that happened. So it automatically selected this option, and if I try to click on Boys Tyke, it's not going to let me. But if I change my option and I go to Boys Tyke, it's going to pick Boys Tyke, and it's not going to let me change it. So that's why that option is really good, because the very first thing they're going to do is say, I know that my team is a Boys Tyke team, so this is the division I'm going to select. Then you add in your test team and put that the team name in there. And then because I've asked for this information from my team staff and I haven't asked for anything else, I don't have a whole lot of information to put in here. I'm going to start typing some information. So I didn't mention who I was at the beginning of this call or this webinar for anybody. So my name is Amanda Velutini. And there we go. Sorry about that. That's probably the 10th time I've done a webinar without introducing myself. So what happened here, as soon as I put in my first name, my last name, and my date of birth, it automatically popped up with a participant lookup saying, I don't see anybody in the system that already has that first name, last name, and date of birth. So we're going to create a new participant. Is that okay? So I'm going to say okay, because that is fine. But if you know that that person should already be found in the system, then maybe you want to double check that you spelled the name right, something like that, right? You want to make sure that the information is correct. Otherwise, it'll pop up and say, hey, are you looking for this Amanda Velutini? And you say yes, and it will pre-populate the rest of my information. So I'm going to put in my head coach information. And then here's where, when we were talking about person information, my registrant's choice, I can say that my team staff or my main contact is going to be somebody new. So it's asking me for first name, last name, date of birth again. Or if I say head coach, it's gone away because we've already collected everything we needed about the head coach up here. If I say assistant coach, it's going to require me to finish that up. But if I say not in the team staff, it's going to require me to also put in who the team contact is going to be. Same thing goes for players. So as soon as we start entering information into our player fields and we select a date of birth, it's going to do a general, I might have done an autofill there. It generally does a pop. Oh, we don't have email address. That's why. So we can't do that there. But yeah, we put in that information. So my gender options are here. So I'd select the gender and then the position. So these positions are going to be based on what your sport is. So if your sport is, one of the that has goalies, you'd see that. So, volleyball, soccer, all the different sports are going to have the different sport specific permission or positions listed in there. You don't have to manage those yourself. And like I said, it already selected my program for me. If I didn't have that pricing structure, I would have to pick something there. And then I only have one option for my payment type, which is offline. I didn't add a whole lot of information there for my, I have no waivers put in there, but I can submit my team registration form now. It's going to ask me to review the information that I put in. So my division, my team name, if I made any mistakes here, I can go back to step 1, make some changes and come back in, or I can just go ahead and say, yeah, I'm going to just confirm this is all good. So that is my, my team having been registered. So now that we've registered a team, and I do see that we're coming short on time, and I'm going to try not to talk too fast, but I am going to try to just finish up a few things that you'll want to see now that we've got a team that's registered. So to review teams that have registered, I'm going to go to my people tools and I'm going to go to review registered teams. So that's located generally down in the bottom couple of rows. So review registered teams. When I come in here, I see my registration form options, and I only have the one available, so I can just select that. My registration date range here should automatically be from the beginning of my season date range to today. My season happens to be from January 1 to December 31 for 2020. So this is looking at anybody who's registered starting at the beginning of this season to today. So I don't have to make any changes there. You can make some criteria selections in here, but typically when we're doing a team registration review, this is what we'll be selecting. I see my summary information, and then I see my detailed information in these color codes that are available. I can export the information that I see. So I can export the summary, which is going to export this program summary up here to say how many registrations do I have into each program, how many dollars are owing, and that type of thing. If I export my team list, it's going to be exporting the list of teams shown here. Now we only have one, but you'll definitely have more than one eventually. Then we see our players as registered and our live rosters. And there is a difference between these two sometimes. So players as registered is only going to show me the players who were actually submitted on the registration forms. Live rosters would take into account any roster changes that have happened after the team was registered. The color codes that we see down here are new, accepted, rejected, waitlisted, or incomplete. So waitlisted would be if I'm on the wait list, I'm going to be in this sort of orange color and I can be invited to register from that wait list. Rejected, I've already been rejected. If you want a team that's been rejected to be accepted, you would have to have them either register again, or you can just manually add a team to a division. You just wouldn't have a registration record. And then new or accepted is what you'll see most often. Incomplete would be if I got to that confirmation screen and I changed my mind and I just didn't proceed, then I would be showing here in this list as an incomplete registration. So you don't have to be alarmed when you see those. Just know that somebody did start the registration process but didn't finish it. The next thing I'll look at is we'll review this here. If you have a lot to review, I often recommend you do this open in a new tab. I'm a big fan of tabs, as you may have noticed already. When I review this, it's going to give me the information that I have listed here. So I would see my division that was selected and my options here, who was entered on the form. So I've got registered players. I don't have my live players tab in here yet because this team has not yet been accepted. The other thing I see in here, which is really important, is the payment information. So here's the registration record for this offline transaction. If they now have given me a check for $100, I can go and record that payment. I can also remove payments and provide a refund from here as well. And I can remove the registration record. I'm going to go ahead and accept the team. So when I click to accept, it's going to ask me which schedule are they being accepted into. So I'm going to say the 2020 regular season schedule, and we'll go ahead and accept them. So now that team, when we go back to our review registered teams list, is now blue. So it's accepted now and it's blue. And the other thing that's going to happen is if I go to my boys tyke division, that team is now part of the division. So I don't have to do anything else. I now just have this team that exists in here, and I can manage rosters and things from here. So AV test team 1, and we'll go and we'll take a look, and we should see that we've got that one player listed on the roster. I did that pretty fast, so I'm going to go back for a quick second to the master menu, because the next thing I want to do is show you a little bit about how those rosters get managed. There's a couple of different ways to do that. So if I go to my master menu to the people section, I can find players using my search criteria here and then just assign players to teams that have been registered, and only accepted teams would be available for me to do that with. The other option would be if I did say that those team contacts are going to be website administrators for their team, they can log in. And so going to my boys tyke example, they would be logged in, but instead of being at the master menu like I was, and like you guys probably are, they're going to be brought directly to this team control panel, and they will only be able to click on the permissions that they've been given. One of those permissions will be add, edit, delete players and parents. So they'll be able to come in here and say add, edit, delete players and parents, and using first name, last name, and date of birth at minimum for the required information, they can create players on this screen. If they create a player that's already in the system, then it will ask them, are you looking for this person? And you say yes, so that it's not going to create a duplicate of that person. This is one of the methods in which they can manage their roster. The other thing that they can do when they manage their roster, and actually I'll go to my, let's see here, my coaches. So add editedly coaches and managers, same idea here as players. So we can look at the profile here. So I can look at the profile that was just created. As an administrator, some of you can do this as well. So I'm going to log in this way just to save time, but otherwise they would be coming out here to the registration account, logging in, and then they see this as their registration account, and they can go to registration information, and it will show them the teams that they have as a coach. And now we can edit that team information. And if I need to add more coaches or add any other players, I can do that from here. So I would just put in their information the same as on the form itself, and I would click to add that. You can also release coaches and players from here. And if needed, you can edit the coach positions or edit player positions and jersey numbers to say that, you know, this person is going to be defenseman number 12, and we can save that information. So when you go to print a roster now, that information is available to you. So those are some methods of managing the rosters. I'm just going to, and I know we've gone a couple minutes over. I promise I'm super, super close to being done here. This was my fear. I haven't done a live webinar in quite some time, just in covering it all. So we have options here now, and I'm just going to add another person just so that we can see one other thing. Oh. Here we go. All right. All right, so now that I've gone and I've added another player. So I've done that because I had permission to, as a coach, I had permission to manage that roster through my registration account. I added another player and the team is now has been accepted. So now when I'm reviewing this, I have my registered players, which only included this person. If I go to the team roster tab now I have 2 people because I just added another person through roster edit. So oftentimes I get asked, why is there a difference between registered players and team roster? So this is the live roster as it exists right now. You can also click this view edit live team roster to go directly to the page where I would be managing just that team here to manage that roster. So that's how we've managed our rosters, and there are multiple ways. Like if you don't want them to do that at all, if you want them to give you a roster, say in a spreadsheet, rosters can always be imported to the system. They can be imported from the master menu, league menu, or team specific menu with a current team listed. So you still always need first name, last name, and date of birth in order to import any participant of any kind of type in the system. But you can import them and add them to the team through an import process if you didn't want to do it manually. So there's various ways for you to get that done after the registration has happened, and whether or not you use those roster lock options is entirely up to you as far as how they can do that. So there are some other things that team registration can do as well. So team registration is, we did talk about the priority registration so that you can restrict who's capable of registering and kind of limit who can register and prioritize the people that you're going to accept. The waitlist invitations can be sent out, and they're time sensitive, which is great because you can say, okay, you've got 24 hours to go in and register for this event. If you don't do that, I'm going to invite the next person. So you kind of miss that opportunity. And then you can add products to purchase for teams to purchase through that registration. So lots of things that team registration can do for you. You can reject teams, obviously. If you reject a team, that's really the end of it for them. If you wanted to remove a team after the fact, so we've already accepted my team here. So if I wanted to say, you know what, AV's team is not going to actually participate, I would go into my boys tyke division, I would select manage teams, and I would actually delete the team. I would just get rid of them from here. And once I do that, I would have the ability to go in and remove the registration record for that team, because you can't remove a team registration record for a team that's still active in the division they've been accepted to. This is also where you can go to add a team manually if you wanted to do that, if you had any reason to do that outside of the registration process. So that covers a lot of stuff, and I do realize that's a lot of information. I tried not to speak too fast. I'm going to take a quick look at at the chat here for some questions. So I do see that there have been some questions. One that I saw, if there is an incomplete registration, can they go back and finish it? The short answer is no. So if I've abandoned the registration process, I do have a recorded, an incomplete record in the system that I've tried to register, or I started to and I stopped. You as an administrator could choose to accept that team anyway without making them go back and finishing the process. So that's one way you can get around the incomplete having to go back and register again. But they can't just pick it up where they left off and register again. There are various reasons for that, mainly just timing out and things like that. Like the screen's just not going to still be valid if you come back to it in that way. If you are, so Goalline has recently also launched some shopping cart functionality, and shopping cart functionality does give you the ability to go in and finish a registration that you hadn't finished previously. But I'm not 100% sure if that applies to team registrations at this moment. So between Robert and I will definitely get that information and make sure that it's part of the follow-up that gets sent out there. Let me see here. So we had, okay. I also saw a reference to Rowan's Law. So Goalline has not specifically done anything programmatically with respect to Rowan's Law, but I would recommend, and what I've done with a lot of folks is recommend that one of the required questions that you ask of the team that's registering or of each of the individual coaches that's being registered is a required radio button type question that says that you have read and understood the Rowan's Law information, that provides maybe only one option that says you have to say yes to this, otherwise you can't register. So that's how a lot of folks have done that, but there's nothing built into the system. We don't provide any specific policies or anything like that as far as like questions that you're presenting on the form, but there are methods for you to do that. The other option, and team registration may apply here, so the other option would be to make it part of your policies. So the waiver information could include that Rowan's Law, but it's only going to be checked by the person who's submitting the form. Beyond that, it would be something that you'd be collecting more on an individual basis. Can an admin go in and add additional information about teams? So to a point, yes. So when you are reviewing a registration, I think I was over here. When you are reviewing a registration, you can make edits to that review registered information. So you can go in and just edit something in there as long as it's a question that's available. So going back to my form here, no, I don't have it out anymore. So we'll review this. So if I did have any questions that weren't answered or that I wanted to change, like maybe she spelled her name wrong, or maybe the team name is slightly different or something, you can make changes here and edit this information. Okay. If they registered and didn't pay, can they go back and pay by credit card? With team registration, I don't believe they can. With individual registration, they can. So that is something that I do expect to see, an improvement in the near future here. But I don't believe you can go and pay team registrations after the fact through that registration account. And actually, we could maybe see that because I didn't pay. Okay, so yeah, it's not an option here right now for me to go in and pay that option online. I would have to make an offline payment method. Some people accept e-transfers and things like that. So I either have to pay by credit card at the time or it's an offline payment method. Okay. There may have been some other questions that I missed, and I do apologize for that, but I wanted to try to get everything covered in there. And I also saw quite a few questions about webinars in the future. So we are ideally going to start offering at least one webinar every month, and our next webinar that we are planning will be on individual registration. We wanted to talk about team registration at this time just because it's a great time for people who are getting ready for fall seasons and end of summer events and things like that that are using a lot of team registration. So we're going to be regularly communicating with you guys to let you know that there are upcoming webinars of various topics. And if you do have topic suggestions, then definitely reach out to our support team and let us know. We do have some help information as well. When you're logged in and you click on the help button, if I can find where I was logged in, we can click on the help button. That's going to take you to faq.goalline.ca. This is a searchable help center here, and we do have some recorded webinars available for viewing and lots of short 3 to 5 minute tutorial videos throughout there. And then you can create a support case directly from the FAQ as well, or if our support team is live and online, you can use our live chat there to communicate with the support team. So thanks so much for everybody who attended today, and we'll be sending out the recording, and you'll be able to share that with some of your colleagues if they would find some of the information found today interesting. So thanks again. Really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day.